If you're looking at becoming a partner for someone in a why discovery process, I've done this a few times myself now. I find it really enjoyable and enriching. And so I wanted to share with you some tips of what has worked well for me, I feel, in these sessions and might help you in how you prepare. So what we're talking about here is find your why in relation to the books by Simon Sinek and his team. There's the book Start With Why by Simon. It's been published for some years. And then more recently, a follow-up book called Find Your Why was published, which is by Simon Sinek, David Mead, and Peter Docker. This really gives you the process that you can follow for either helping an individual discover their true driver, their true why of the impact that they want to make on others, what they want to do with their lives. And also to do that for a company, a team. Why does this company or why does this team exist? So today I'm going to talk to you about the personal why discovery that you would do with an individual. This might be in a business context because you may be talking to the founder of a business. And if they're still very involved in why that business does what it does, then oftentimes the why for that individual is very closely linked to the why of that business, what it's all about. So getting this well-defined, I've covered that in another video on the importance of starting with why. So let's talk about the process. I want to share with you 6 things that I think are useful in knowing as you're going into the process. So for a personal why discovery, first of all, you don't need to read the whole Find Your Why book. From this book, it's chapters 1, 2, and 3 really that are key. The first chapter is mostly a recap of the Start With Why book. And then chapters 2 and 3 give you the expectations and the process to follow for an individual why discovery. Chapters 4 and 5 would apply if you are preparing to do this with a team, but I'll not cover those today. We'll do those another time. And the rest of the book is actually what you do as the follow-on steps. So as a partner for a why discovery, it's those first chapters 1, 2, and 3. It's also the appendices, because there's some good example questions that you can use to help you do this really effectively. And also there's some online resources that are mentioned throughout the book. There's a link for the online resources, which is bit.ly, that's bit.ly/FYW resources. So on that page, you find some other useful worksheets and so forth. So step 1 is read the material. This process is laid down and it's been used by David Mead and Peter Docker many, many times. And so we're really benefiting from their experience in doing this. And I found that hugely useful in preparing for this myself. The second thing I want to share is how long does it take? Well, a minimum of 3 hours really, I think, to do this effectively, and a little more wouldn't hurt as well. Maybe more like 3.5 hours, it might be useful. But you don't want to overcook it, but you also need the time to explore properly. So allocate a good solid at least 3 hours where you can be away from all distractions. So if you've got your mobile phone there, you want to put that in airplane mode if you're just using it as a timer, and just letting people know to not disturb you during that time, so you can focus on this. The 3 hours that you allocate, you probably want to take a break once or twice through that time as well, just to catch your breath and come back. And particularly if it's gotten to some really emotional points through that discussion, a chance to just reset and carry on. So that's the second thing, allocate the time and the focus. The third is about the focus itself, the active listening. Because you're not going to be doing that much talking as the partner, you're much more wanting to tune into what the other person is saying. Often in conversations, we're both listening, but we're also thinking about what we're going to say next. And you want to resist doing that here entirely. Just tune in, just listening as well as watching for clues, watching for when the other person really goes silent and is thinking through based on the question that you've asked of how to answer that. And you never want to interrupt that process because they're looking for the words to put words to something that probably has no real words. They're trying to describe a feeling, and so it's coming from a place of no language. As these books explain really well, that it's the words that they're putting, so you can add those to your pages, so you can be building up a picture that you can then share and discuss. The questions that you're asking, strangely, you're really trying to avoid asking the question, why? Why was that important? Because the place that it's coming from isn't really one of language. And so better questions to ask are comparative ones, or a phrasing of using what rather than why. For example, instead of why was that important to you, what was it about that that made that important to you? Or you've had that experience probably multiple times in your life. What was it about that particular instance that makes it stand out for you? Those sorts of questions do a much better job at helping the other person find the words, find the feelings, and find the reasons to then share with you. So the questioning is really important, and the book gives you some great examples like those I've shared. Fourth thing I want to share with you is the capturing of this, because your role as partner is to get this into a form that you can analyze it and share it right there on the spot. And you're not doing this at another time. You're doing this within the 3 hours or so that you've allocated. It's all happening at one time. So in the book, they talk about taking a sheet of paper, putting a line down the center of that, and using the left side to capture the story and the facts and what actually happened. And then the right side to write down what really matters. The most important stuff will end up on the right side of the page. And those are the terms that you hear coming through again and again, the more emotional terms that the person is sharing when they're describing those scenarios and why it mattered to them. What I found really useful is just grabbing a spiral bound book, and then you can start on story one. You've got the left side to capture all the facts of what happened and what matters, of what that story was, and on the right side you're capturing the feelings and the terms that are coming through describing that. And as you hear terms coming through again and again, you're circling those on the right side as to things that really matter. That allows you to jump to story 2, story 3, and then when you hear something that relates back maybe to a prior story, it allows you to quickly just flick back and maybe drill a little further, looking for that golden thread, as Simon and his team talk about, which is what links this together, of that hidden meaning that may not have been apparent at all to the other person until you've captured it this way. So I found that format on a spiral bound to be a really helpful way to do this, and circling or underlining the themes as they're coming through, so that you can lead through in the 2 to 2.5 hours initially of all the time being spent on the stories, so you can capture them for review. So tip number 4, I found that has worked really well. Number 5 of reviewing this is give yourself a little bit of time to take a break. So let's say you're 2.5 hours in, you've covered all of the stories, and you've got maybe half an hour left to go to review. So take 10 minutes away from each other to just go over your notes and look back through, sifting through what you've captured so far, to circle what's most important for you, because to start with, it may not be apparent at all of what the themes are. From my experience, it's been a good hour to an hour and a half into the discussion before I start to see the really strong patterns emerging. So take 10 minutes, go back over your notes, and then get back together to share those. So to share them, you're just talking through from each of the stories. You're not a counselor, you're not making judgment or anything on what's happened. You're just highlighting what you've heard and the thread that ties this together. Some of the terms that were coming up a lot about what was emotional, what mattered, the connections between these things. Share these with your partner. And then the most important part is to move into the last stage, which is stage 6 in what I wanted to share with you. And that's bringing it all together. So once you've shared those themes, you're then each going to draft a why statement. So you'll write one, and the person who's having the why discovery is going to write one, but you'll write them in isolation. You don't have to separate to do this, but you just take a moment to sit back and work for a few minutes on a draft why, and then you're going to compare them. So the format, I found it's best to stick to the book on what the recommended format is for the why. There is a format that David Mead and Peter Docker are suggesting, which is to blank, so that blank. To whatever contribution this person wants to make, so that the second blank is the impact. So to blank so that blank. So that will be the format, and that makes it easier to compare the two. It's going to be to whatever this person main contribution is that they want to make, so that whatever the impact of what they want that to be on others. So that's kind of the essence of it. The 6 things are: number 1, use the books to learn the techniques and the questions that are in there. 2, allocate the time so you can really be uninterrupted for a good 3 hours, maybe a little more. 3rd, it's all about the listening, the active listening, the questioning, and allowing time for the other person to think through their thoughts. Number 4, you're capturing that. So I found that this spiral bound format has worked really well to uncover the themes. In review, take a few minutes to go back through your notes and then regroup so that you can share those themes. And number 6, you're then drafting a why in that to blank so that blank form, so you can compare the two. And every time I've done this, they've been remarkably similar of what that draft why statement is at the end. So that's how it runs. And then at the end, you just hand your notes over, because it's really their stories. If you've done this remotely, you can photograph the pages and just send those through on an email. If you've done this on video and recorded it, you can send them the recording, and then they've got all the materials for the next part. Because they'll just be working with this draft why now for a period of time to see, does it sit well, does it feel right, and also to go through the other themes and distill out what are the 4 or 5 hows that go with the why. And in that, we're talking about the golden circle, the why, and then the hows to build that golden circle out to what you actually do. So all kudos to Simon Sinek, David Mead, and Peter Docker for documenting this. It makes it easier for all of us to do this. And the one thing I'd ask you is that if you have a why discovery where someone else is your partner and you've done this, you find when you then step into the partner role, so by paying it forward, please go ahead and be the partner for other people so that they can have this discovery as well. But by paying it forward, I think you understand the process much more deeper, and it's hugely enriching and honourable as a thing to do for another person to help them get that purpose really clear. I'd love to hear from you if you do this, or what your experiences are. Well, but from having done this so far, those are the ones I wanted to share with you today. Thanks. See you soon.